All right, we've got one person on. Hi, Mitch. Second person on, a bit quiet tonight. All right, we might just give it a few more minutes to allow some others to jump on, and then we'll get started. How are you going, Mitch? Hi, Abby. It's a bit of a quiet one tonight, but hopefully some others jump on shortly. Give it a few more minutes because it's right on 6. How are you going, Abby? Hi, Bianca. All right, it's a bit of a quiet one tonight, but we might get started. So tonight, I wanted to talk to everyone and do a live on emotional eating. So basically, emotional eating affects everyone. Everyone feels things, and to help comfort us when experiencing uncomfortable or negative emotions or finding comfort from food is what a lot of us tend to reach out to. And basically, the reasoning behind this is that when we experience these negative emotions, we feel a sense of emptiness and worthlessness, and food is known to help fill this feeling inside of us, and we use food to make us feel more whole in a way. So I thought I might start off with talking about a few of the causes of emotional eating. And the first one that I wanted to bring up is dieting. So basically, the side effects of dieting may sometimes actually be confused with emotional eating. So it's just an important one to keep in mind and check in with ourselves, and particularly if you feel as though you're struggling with emotional eating. Could it be the dieting and the effects of dieting, particularly around that restriction of food that is causing you to then eat larger amounts, say at nighttime, or are there other things going on and it's more so emotional eating rather than that dieting? And I guess the reasoning behind dieting and emotional eating getting quite confused is because when we engage in dieting, we are more likely to engage in binge eating and seeking out high energy foods, and these high energy foods in greater volumes. So I guess also just thinking about dieting in terms of when the body is actually engaging in a diet, it can't actually tell the difference between the dieting or starvation. So basically, we're really lucky that the body does have internal cues such as feeling hungry or experiencing really intense food cravings that drive us to eat. However, when we restrict too much and too often, that driving us to eat and those food cravings can become so intense that it can cause us to overeat. And it can be really difficult to maintain our weight then. So restricting our food intake, whether that be the amounts or the types of food, it can cause a preoccupation with food where the act of restricting actually causes that really intense desire to eat. So similar to what I just mentioned. And it's been shown to trigger the Last Supper effect, where you basically want to eat everything that's in front of you and as much as you possibly can of it, which, when we do this, we don't feel great. We don't feel great about ourselves. We feel really uncomfortable, and it's probably not something that we want to be engaging in too often. And I guess even in the act of trying to suppress thoughts about food and those cravings, these thoughts become much greater and greater in our minds and will result in us consuming much greater amounts of food. So, you know, when feeling as though you're not really succeeding with a diet, you know, we do feel quite let down and upset about ourselves, and it can be a never-ending cycle of that, you know, binging, feeling let down, okay, we'll restrict ourselves again, and then it's just that never-ending cycle, which isn't much fun at all. So the second thing, the second cause of emotional eating is actually a poor self-esteem. And many people, unfortunately, in our world these days, are at war with their bodies. It's been shown that people place a huge focus on their bodies, and they're not satisfied with how their bodies look, and then are likely to engage in that emotional eating. And it really comes down to those feelings of really low self-worth that then ultimately makes someone want to reach out to food in the hope that it will make them feel better. The third cause of emotional eating that's really, really common is stress. And I hear a lot from clients that, you know, some people, when they feel stressed, they'll either not eat much at all and tend to sort of more restrict themselves. But then there's other people that call themselves stress eaters, where they feel really out of control with food and engage in eating to help them, I guess, again, feel that sense of pleasure and calm and comfort them when feeling uncomfortable. I guess another thing about feeling stressed is that it can be really difficult when we're feeling stressed to make the best decisions. So how can we really expect to make nutritious choices when it comes to food if we're feeling all over the place, our mind's not thinking right? And I guess in these situations, that's when we tend to make those impulse decisions when it comes to food and what we eat. And again, it can be really hard when feeling stressed, and particularly if you feel quite stressed often. When we do feel stressed, we have a few changes in our cortisol levels, which is a hormone in our body that is linked with our appetite. And basically, when we feel stressed, these changes occur in cortisol, and it increases our appetite, and then we end up eating more than we usually would. So we do want to try and keep these stress levels to a minimum to help keep our cortisol stable and help us better regulate our appetite. And I guess just making it easier for ourselves to not be, I guess, craving more of certain foods. And a few things I actually wanted to bring up. So emotional eating could potentially even be a learned response. So for example, you know, when younger and you know, you hurt yourself and somebody gave you, say, an ice cream or something, it can be learned over time that when you know, bad situations happen or something that really gets us down or upset, we have learned to reach out to certain foods, and that tend to be those more sugary, high energy foods. So there's something sort of around that learnt response as well in terms of going for certain foods based on our emotions. And I guess now just thinking about how to avoid engaging in emotional eating, it can be really important to understand the difference between hunger, so our physical hunger cues, and our emotional hunger cues, and just to sort of try and recognize when is it emotional eating, or when are we actually eating because we're feeling those you know, physically hunger cues in our body. So I guess just to go over the differences, if any of you aren't sure about the differences between physical hunger and emotional hunger. So first of all, physical hunger, it develops really slowly over time. So it can be a good idea just to, practice tuning into your body over the day, and trying to recognize when that, those first feelings of feeling hungry are starting to appear. It's, it's also craving a wide variety of foods, and you do feel the sensation of fullness, and you tend to stop eating when you're feeling that feeling of fullness. And there's generally no negative feelings about eating when you're feeling that true physical hunger. Whereas when you're experiencing emotional hunger, this type of hunger can actually come about really suddenly. You tend to crave certain foods only, and they may be, those high energy foods, those really like sugary, more fatty foods, and you may actually binge on those foods, and you don't actually end up feeling that sensation of fullness, which can make it really difficult when sort of judging how much to have and when to stop. And unfortunately, you actually tend to end up feeling quite guilty and a bit of shame about eating when it's that emotional hunger rather than that physical hunger. So they're just a few things to try and tune into, and just trying to start recognize that feeling, and check in to see how you're feeling after eating. A few other things that you can actually do to try and avoid engaging in emotional eating is simply just to avoid diets and aim to eat regularly throughout the day, so you're not in that all or nothing mindset when walking in from getting home from work, or I guess these days just walking out of your bedroom and going to the kitchen and demolishing what's ever in sight. So trying to be a bit more flexible with your eating. It is a really good idea, and what I recommend to most people is eating enough across the day. So eating regularly throughout the day, getting in those 3 main meals, those 2 snacks between your main meals, just to help keep you satisfied throughout the day and help keep those cravings at bay. And it's also important to make sure you're getting some carbs, some fats, some protein, so all your main macronutrients at each meal, as all these nutrients will have a role in keeping you full, slowing down digestion, and keeping you satisfied for much longer. So one last thing I'd probably mention, just in terms of what you might be able to have a little bit of control over when looking at your diet, is actually making sure your fluids are adequate, as there can be some confusion around the hunger and thirst signals. So always just make sure you are drinking adequate amounts of water to make sure you're not feeling hungry, and that thirst isn't resulting in food cravings. So just check in and make sure that you are getting adequate amounts of fluid throughout the day. I guess I might stop here and just see if we've got any questions. So we've got one from Abby. So is my emotional eating the same as binge eating, or do they go hand in hand? So I would say they definitely have some similarities. In terms of emotional eating, it's more around, I would say, emotions that trigger it, or situations. Whereas binge eating, I would say it's a bit more complex than emotional eating, and there's a few more things that go into it, particularly habits and things. I will probably can't quite explain it the best way at the moment. That's a tricky one, because I think as well, just looking at sort of the levels of disordered eating around binge eating can be quite complex. And generally binge eating would be, categorized as engaging in those habits a lot more frequently, whereas the emotional eating would more so be, I would say emotional eating is normal, to be honest, but then it can get to a point where it can become quite out of control, which is probably more that binge eating side of things. I will put together a bit of a blog, so I'll make sure to explain that a little bit better in there for you all. Sorry, Abby, if that wasn't the best response to that one. Did anyone else have any questions? I guess as well, just in terms of trying to reduce, the number of times that you engage with that emotional eating, and it potentially, in the long term leading to that binge eating, is just sort of finding ways to manage stress. So, often it can be breathing techniques or a meditation, doing things you love. That's always really important. And it's really just about trying to get into that sympathetic state where you've lowered your heart rate, feeling calm, and trying to keep those cortisol levels under control, where, it just makes it a lot easier for yourself when, around food and those choices that you make. Something else I might touch on actually is, I guess, just when feeling, if it's probably common at the moment, just being in this lockdown where, some of us might be really struggling with our self-worth. And, I guess more time spent on social media, that's always never that helpful, to be honest. But, just comparing ourselves to others and, particularly our bodies to other people. It's always, I guess, if that's something you're struggling with, I'd probably be looking at, more the internal factors rather than looking outwards and what other people think. So, for example, when it comes to your body and body image, if you're not satisfied there, I'd bring it inwards and really just start reflecting on you, your identity, and I would be looking at, what your body can do rather than what it looks like. What's its health at the moment rather than what it looks like, and really just trying to take all the positives out of it. Even practicing affirmations each day can be a really helpful one, and just help you, each day just see that you're getting somewhere and going forward, and getting in the right mindset to, be more likely to engage in those positive eating behaviours. So I would have a look into maybe doing some affirmations, and just not forgetting about self-care, particularly while we're in lockdown at the moment. But I might stop there because I don't think I've had any more questions. And I'll, keep an eye out for a blog coming up on emotional eating. But thanks for everyone tuning in. Bye.